The very first time I went on the Midnight Mormons, I said this and it was true. This is absolutely true. It's true. I'm not talking about seemingly the same type of people. The same people who used to get mad at me and my rocker friends for listening to Megadeth while we played basketball in my front yard. I'm thinking, I have in my mind right now, they're the same ones on my Facebook, mom-splaining me wokeness. They're the same people. It wasn't like saying like esoterically it's kind of the same person. I'm saying it was the same person.
Led Zeppelin is a gateway to Satanism, and Jordan Peterson is a gateway to the alt-right. Everybody understands this.
They fall for all the moral panics. They fall for all of them. Every one of them. And you are the moral panickers. You are the conspiracy theorists. And I get called a moral panicker and conspiracy theorist for saying, look at these nutty moral panicking conspiracy theorists. Stop it.
You can lead off with that clip, and then we could end it with that clip. Right?
The Kate Kelly thing is pretty much already passed, but I don't know. Mormon stories, usually they do so many goofy things.
I think they're streaming right now.
Yeah, they got some sort of stream going talking about some sexual harassment stuff that happened with the bishop in Idaho, and they're making a big to do about that. But is that what the one you're seeing live right now?
Let me see.
So there's all this stuff last week that they got their channel kicked off of, or I don't know if they call it channel, but they got kicked off of TikTok. And then people were making fun of them because the TikTok thing that they posted saying they were kicked off of TikTok was obviously some sort of fake. I don't know why they did that, because I think they really were kicked off of TikTok, but I don't know why they used that fake thing. But
none of that makes sense to me. It's all incredibly lame.
So
yeah, they're live now. Speaking out when a Mormon bishop abuses children.
Yeah, so I was listening to that a bit earlier. It's a little interesting because I think the people who are speaking out are current active members. But I was also listening, and it was endless systems of systems, and it's not the people, it's the systems. It's the systems of systems, it's not the people, it's the systems. And they keep repeating that when I really kind of think they're talking about the people. And that's been the same thing with the Brad Wilcox stuff. But you guys keep, I don't know what the prayer you're saying into the ether is when you guys chirp out into the air, systems, not people. And then everything you talk about is people, not systems.
I think it's just a way to avoid that very dodge. I mean, that's things like the number of times they said Brad Wilcox, and like 25% of those times are them saying it's not about Brad Wilcox. Like, yeah, no, it clearly is, because you keep saying his name. So that's obviously
this situation too. It's obviously about this guy who definitely probably had some sort of sexual harassment with minors. He's in prison for it. And then they're saying
the title of this thing is annoying just because it says speaking out. Like, what? That's a big trick? Really? Like that's the brave moral stand to take, is to see something and say something when you see child abuse? Okay.
Well, they're talking about how it was all kind of quiet and under wraps, and then they said stuff that was inappropriate to say when those victims must have been there in the audience, and they came and said some stuff in the crowd like, oh, he was a good bishop, but he had to go, like just sweeping it under the rug and hiding it, which was I guess hurtful to possible victims in the crowd. And that the stake president kept saying kind of PR-y things to kind of hide it. But the guy went to prison.
That's one of the things that where you talk about, because it always bugs me, is that everybody, like all the shit coming out about CNN, and and everybody on the right goes, haha, see, that's exactly what those CNN types are, and then like when it happens at the Catholic Church, haha, see, that's exactly how Catholics are. It's like, no, like you say, it's like, no, once your organization gets big enough, it becomes a statistical certainty that at some point you're going to have some kind of freaking scandal. Like,
yeah, but then they would say, well, our system would take care of it right and correctly and all that stuff. But
they're clearly not.
This guy's in prison. No, he's gone prison-ish. Are you getting an echo on this now?
No.
Okay. Yeah, that guy went prison-ish, so they're upset about just ways it's been talked about around it in the ward. I don't know. But I didn't. It was just I only listened to a little bit of it. It was just a start, and I don't know. I also think they think systems, not people. They got to keep saying that because they want to keep the pressure on it. It's all the church's fault, and they always do that stuff like mentioning. Well, this also happens. There's like some percentage of Catholic priests, some percentages of this and that. Guess where else it is? Any organization that's sufficiently large, it's in your public schools, and I'm sure you're hyper defenders of, and the percentages are higher in your public schools than they are at.
And the other thing is like, I don't know, because there's obviously an awful lot to criticize about how, at least some of what we know about how the church handles this stuff. But then on the other hand, where it's like, well, what exactly are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to? Do you want them to publicize it every time, and then
they want them to announce we don't have spirit of discernment. See, whoa,
and we have no idea what's going on, and it's like, yeah, I mean, when John Dehlin had his scandal, they went through their period of trying to minimize and do PR. They didn't just come right out immediately with their full transparency and say exactly what was going on. I don't know. It's tough.
So that leads to this, because some people said that the whole shenanigans about TikTok was to run cover because this thing hit the internet first, and this was Kate Kelly. Actually, she did it in like a Twitter post. I should show the Twitter post first. Let me see, share screen. This is where I think sometimes it goes.
I was up late watching you music yesterday, and now I'm tired.
Oh yeah, you came to our giggy show.
Giggy show?
Giggy show.
Nice little corner, dark corner by a fireplace.
Where's that?
Where you played last night.
Oh yeah. Leaving Mormonism is she posted this February 17th, and that was like the same day that he said we got kicked off TikTok, and they made that the big story. Leaving Mormonism is very hard. There are many who attempt to manipulate and take advantage of those leaving because of their unique vulnerabilities. A man named John Dehlin is one of those people. The undersigned want to make clear we don't support him. Googly googe. Share screen. There was one more with that. Let's see. I think it's specifically important for me to speak up because I was once publicly supportive of John Dehlin. I want to be on the record that I no longer support him or think he should have access to vulnerable people in crisis.
What does that even mean? So do we need to lock him up?
I guess.
Should be allowed outside?
Yeah. Well, then right
like if he meets somebody and standing in line at a checkout stand and they say, oh gosh, I'm sure having a hard time leaving Mormonism, like, oh, John Dehlin shouldn't be allowed to talk to that person. He's a vulnerable person with a unique crisis that makes him extra vulnerable to John Dehlin.
Well, then right in the middle of that, he's constantly doing his Dr. Phil episodes, showing people that he's there to talk about other people's vulnerabilities. Let's see.
And it's his product. That's his product.
Let's see what his letter says. We do not support John Dehlin. John Dehlin has long used Mormon and ex-Mormon women to mask his bad behavior.
Just the women.
He has used our talents, time, movements, and reputation to bolster his brand and enrich himself. He takes advantage of vulnerable people in crisis who are in legitimate need of help and community. When women come forward with critiques of his behavior or allegations of wrongdoings, he retaliates by lashing out at them and attempting to publicly discredit them. We aren't people who protect the Mormon Church, and we also don't protect men who put the community at risk, whether they are Mormon or not. We've had enough. Many of us have worked with him in the past and want to make... Don't laugh at this. This is serious.
They just now reached their limit. Feminism has finally had enough.
This is serious, man. We're laughing at trauma. I saw somebody getting mad at Jonathan Streeter earlier for laughing at trauma. Don't you laugh at trauma. Many of us have worked with him in the past and want to make clear that we no longer do and don't encourage any other women to do so. It's not safe. We refuse to be used as a mask for abuse. We think it's a better use of everyone's time and investment to support other folks building community and providing resources for exiting Mormonism. If you need therapy, you should seek out a professional who is actually licensed by the state to provide those services. That's such a dig. Because he did just do the kind of like a bare minimum PhD stuff and then don't get certified so that you can do these Dr. Phil like crowd level.
Yeah, you don't put your license at risk for ethical violations when you don't have a license to put at risk.
If you need community, as we all do, You should seek out people who don't regularly tear down women who disagree with them. I don't know why you're laughing in the middle of sentences. I'm sorry to laugh at this trauma. It's time we reconsider giving so much energy and support to someone who has the potential to do so much harm. John Dehlin often attempts to paint criticism as an attack and is an expert in making himself the victim. This is not an attack. It's a clarification of values. Our values are to support and believe women. We invite you to do the same. Big list of names: Kate Kelly, Joanna Smith.
I like that Kate Kelly is still the founder of Ordained Women, which, I mean, isn't that a dead movement? Is it even a thing?
Well, this says Joanna Smith's just an ordained woman founding board member. I think she'd have like a longer storyline of like NPR's pet Mormon. You know, I don't know what else to. Is that Joanna Smith? That was Joanna Smith, right?
Joanna Brooks?
Brooks.
Is that the name? Brooks is the pet Mormon.
With Joanna Smith.
Elna Baker was the NPR pet Mormon.
Man, I always thought that was Joanna Brooks. I mixed her up.
That's a different Joanna.
Amy Grubbs, Sharon Price. I don't know any of these people, man.
Yeah.
Except Rosebud. Well, I don't know her, but I know who
Micah
she is.
McGriggs. I feel like I saw that name. I feel like that name is one of the names that cyberbullied me on Lindsay Park's page.
Why is Lindsay Park's name not on here? Lindsay Park
isn't that fascinating?
Silence speaks volumes. Silence speaks volumes.
Also, like, I don't know, Rosebud. Are we? I guess we're still protecting her anonymity, even though it's not even anonymity. But the thing is, anytime Kate Kelly criticizes anybody, like, because in general, when feminism scolds me, the perfect response is that Rick and Morty thing when he says your boos mean nothing to me because I've seen what makes you cheer. And that's how I feel. That's exactly how I feel about Kate Kelly. Like, because I mean, that's not even directed at me, and like some of that I think she might have a case. A lot of it's obviously probably ridiculously overstated. I also love how, like, I mean, like, feminists, they can't help themselves. Women most effective. John Dehlin uses women and he damages women, and like, just make it more obvious that you really only care about women. But yeah, like, her boos mean nothing to me because I've seen what makes her cheer. She believes that Columbus brought rape to the New World. It's such a evil level of stupid that she's into. So
that's a bummer. I thought that was Joanna Brooks on there. That's Joanna Brooks. I always think it's interesting when it's somebody who my parents might know. Although Joanna Brooks has had some wacky things. Jonathan Streeter showed me a thing where he was in a book club with her, and she said that she centers her whole entire idea of activism around that guy. I can't say his name. Ignatiev, that dude who says like white people should. Do you know who that dude is?
No.
Oh goodness, I couldn't even pull it up.
Because Joanna Brooks she's still like the Salt Lake Tribune's principal Mormon specialist.
Noel Ignatiev. I said it almost right. That's pretty amazing. So she says she centers her activism around this dude. Let me show you this whack-a-mole.
Ignatiev.
Have you seen him?
I don't think I've heard of this guy until now. Oh, he's best known for his theories on race and for his call to abolish whiteness.
Yeah, and he's said some pretty wild things within that, like
treason to whiteness is loyalty to humanity. Wow, that's fun.
New abolition and white race. Yeah, Joanna Brooks says this is her.
It makes me think of the Khmer Rouge when they would drive around broadcasting. What is it? To keep you is no benefit. To destroy you is no loss.
Yeah. He had some sort of like really outrageous like statement though, where he said like all white people need to commit suicide or something like that.
We do not hate you or anyone else for the color of her skin. What we hate is a system, ding, 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 that confers privileges and burdens on people because of their color. Like, it's just that, I mean, it's an article of faith that this is how the world works, but it's just so stupid. Like, it's just one of those things where, like, really you'd think that, like, I don't know. It's like with Mormons, like, well, it's an article of faith that the Native Americans are descendant from a population of a few families of Middle Eastern Jews. I mean, like it's just it's obviously just absurd. And like this idea that like, oh, the system converts, like that's just the like norm. That's the universal standard, is racism from white people. It is not fair skin that makes people white. It is fair skin in a certain kind of society, one that attaches social importance to skin color. Like this is the guy who's obsessed with it. I don't
Yeah.
attach socialist like I don't attach social importance to skin color. I don't. I just plain don't.
Make
This
no
guy does.
mistake. Make no mistake about it. We intend to keep bashing the dead white males and the live ones and the females too until the social construct known as the white race is destroyed, not deconstructed, but destroyed.
But see, like, this is one of those things where it's like this guy is the guy who this is the guy who believes in the white race. Like at least the way he describes it, because like not even white nationalists, I think, would describe it exactly quite like he does.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, I saw the video of, I don't know if it's a public video, but I saw her saying that she centers her activism around
So I mean, how do you?
New Yorker
I
Noel
guess it's just like
Ignatiev's long fight against whiteness.
I mean, I guess it's just like every other religion with their profound hypocrites. But like, how, if you believe that, you even go out into the world? Like, shouldn't you, like, at the very least, like, disappear into the woods and just get off the grid and get out of society's way as much as possible? If not, kill yourself. Like, if you believe that shit, shouldn't you just kill yourself?
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know, but it's like my communist work friend, is a like he doesn't need this job. He announced that he just is doing it for extra money because he's a landlord. Like, and he derives his primary income as a landlord while he disrupts communism, or disrupts capitalism. It's like, how the hell do you do that?
yeah, it's endless. So we better get corrected. We got to get corrected.
Oh my God, John Oliver! This makes me so sad.
Why?
Because when John Oliver was a regular on the old Daily Show, he was great because that show was great. And what
Yeah,
I
most
wonder
of
is
them.
like, is John Oliver just basically a ventriloquist dummy for writers? And when the Daily Show was written by good writers, he was funny, and now that the Daily Show is written by propagandistic hacks, that's
Maybe
why
that's
John
it.
Oliver just became a propagandistic hack. I mean, this is one of those things, like, somebody talks about that the left constantly gets wrong about like right-wing demagogues types, is they say, oh, these people are radicalizing the audience. Like, no, the audience is radicalizing them. you
Yeah.
know like, you see it constantly, over and over. Like, I
Well,
remember way, way, way back in the day when Glenn Beck was first starting to get national syndication, and I would listen to AM radio and come on, and like on AM radio, like between like Limbaugh and what's his bucket, Hannity, like Glenn Beck was like ultra reasonable, and he was like, I remember one of the very early things I ever heard of him was he did a big special on the Popular Mechanics article debunking 9/11 myths. And he was like very like, yeah. And then I like listened to Glenn Beck over about like a year and a half, like turn into the Glenn Beck we know now, with the
well,
chalkboard and all that.
I strangely enough think Glenn Beck, since he's gotten off all the mainstream media and gone to his own thing, he's gotten far more reasonable. I
I think
couldn't
so. I think so, because if you go on Fox, it's going to be very hard for you to not go push in that direction. Yeah.
back in the era of Jon Stewart, I was on the side of all the Jon Stewart guys because of the anti-war stuff, which maybe they'll come out on the right side of that now that we're getting back into them.
Yeah. Well,
But
see, that's the thing. I mean, just talking about the same thing is Tucker Carlson is interesting
yeah,
because one thing is like, cuz you know the way the left thinks about him, the way they talk about him, it's funny because like they don't get that anybody who watches Tucker, whether they like him or not, knows that the left is lying about him when they say
yeah,
like, "Oh, he's pushing this conspiracy theory or that." We're like, "No, he's obviously not." But what's so funny is that like right now he's like the only consistently anti-war voice about like why should we care about Ukraine?
And he does
Like,
call out either side
and
of it. He calls
yeah, and
out
like
the neocons and the
and that's the other thing is like because like what the left doesn't understand that like right now, if you want to go to corporate media and get good criticism of Republicans generally and neoconservatives specifically, go to Tucker.
yeah.
Like he's the guy
It's
actually
so
doing that.
weird because
Yeah.
everybody remembers that moment years ago where Jon Stewart took down Tucker Carlson. And I was squarely on the side of Jon Stewart at that time, just like, oh, get Tucker Carlson. Yeah, you took him down. And then all the gremlins that boiled off the back of Jon Stewart and came into our society, they are basically beyond NPR and them and MSNBC are just state propaganda, like the group of them together.
Yeah.
All they do all day long, every day, all day is state propaganda. And
Yeah,
they
you can
almost
tell.
all came from Jon Stewart, who still isn't as bad as all of them, but
Not at all.
but
I did
his
see like a few weeks ago Tucker had the Satanic Temple guys on, and like
oh yeah.
Tucker just totally does not understand Satanic Temple. Like he
He doesn't
fell
get
for it
the
basically.
joke.
And he doesn't get the clever joke, but
But they do
so
have, they
it's like,
do kind of now also just have Johnny on the nose, basic bitch liberalism ideas, and then like couch it in their satanic
yeah.
edgelordiness. But
Well, yeah, their whole thing is just to say, because basically they're just saying, because in all these cases where using special frameworks and whatever, where different Christian
you can use
churches
religion to get your
have they get
politics
it, yeah,
across.
yeah,
Mhm.
you use religion to get they find their way to get yourself into schools, and so the Satanic Temple just comes along and says, okay, we're playing by your rules. And every time everybody wigs out and they just say like, well, you know what, if you just if you just say no religion in school at all, then we'll walk away. But as long
If that's
as
true,
you keep
they get to the
carving out,
point where I
yeah.
think they actually are into trying to get the politics in through the
Oh, are
like
they?
the
Well, because I mean, I don't know. I guess I haven't followed in a long time because like I
But if they
remember
really
like
did have the point of we'll walk away, if you guys walk away, I'm all for that.
no, I think that really that is their whole case is like basically that like as long as you guys keep saying we are going to allow religion in schools, we're going to keep using your rules and playing our troll game. And as soon as you say no, we're not going to allow any Bible clubs at school, just don't do that. You can do it after school or whatever it is. But yeah, that's all they're about.
So here's John Oliver correcting us on another religion that's entered
Oh,
schools. But so I had the last podcast I did, I just flew alone. I don't even know why. I was thinking about that wisecrack thing, and James Lindsay had just come out with his book, Race Marxism. And so I just made the video and wanted to pull up some of the ways that things are lied about in the news to run cover for this, some sort of like apologetics. I had some people pushing back on me in the comments who I think are incorrect and are still incorrect. But let's let John Oliver set the record straight
yeah.
for us here.
Moving on. Our main story tonight concerns school. It's the only setting in which a child dissecting a frog is not an immediate red flag. We teach kids a lot in school, from
Was that
It lasts for its own audience.
a joke?
Yeah, I mean, it's just
Was it?
weak.
reading to long division to how to play the recorder for some reason. But recently, there has been a
See, I don't think there's enough teaching music in school. They need to do more recorder.
Yeah, for some reason, because recorders are cheap. That's the reason.
Yeah.
That's it. Give them all a guitar. I'm down with that.
lot of concern over one particular thing that people worry that kids are learning.
Critical race theory is being taught in our schools.
Oh my gosh, Fox News is talking about it. How embarrassing.
That guy just said a thing that is factually, demonstrably true.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, liberals and lefties and people who I used to think were on my side of things, I'm embarrassed that it's Fox News covering it too.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, that this dumbass is right about this. And he's right about it because you guys are so wrong about it. That's scary. It's like, I remember having that moment about during the Kavanaugh thing where it's like, holy shit, the left has gone so far up the deep end that Lindsey Graham spoke for 2.5 minutes and was totally right the entire time.
Yeah, it's you guys who made Tucker Carlson right.
Yeah.
And the thing is like any sort of thing, all of these channels, if they didn't have, if the best option wasn't just to be correct, I know they would lie. But they have the best option of just being correct about it. Like things are always just so much easier when your side of it is just right about it. And you guys have given Fox that high ground.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of it though is, because on the left, in most cases, like I think it's a lot like the young Mormon missionary who is out tracting, and that's the first time they find out about the stone in the hat.
Yeah.
And your immediate reaction is like, no, that's just a stupid lie. And then as people around you start going like, no, actually, no, that's actually, yeah, and you end up in, and we watch it happen where like you start making excuses, and we watch this whole thing like where they said, oh, there's no such thing as CRT. Wow, there's a thing as CRT, but no, it's not in school. Well, I mean, it's in schools, but I mean, is that even a problem? It's good that it's in schools, yeah. And like we just watch that whole thing just happen in real time. It's amazing, just like Orwell said.
Yeah, that's the kettle logic.
We made it 29 seconds in.
Now I won't switch that yet because I'll do plenty of kettle logic here. So I'll pull that up a little bit later. We'll go a little bit more.
Critical race theory is bunk.
Critical race theory is a lie from the first word to the last, from start to finish.
Racist critical race theory.
Critical race theory.
Critical race theory in the schools and the wokeness.
Let me tell you right now, critical race theory is bigoted, it is a lie, and it is every bit as racist as the Klansmen in white sheets.
It's more racist. It's way more racist than Klansmen.
Yeah.
Like that Ted Cruz man. I do not like him shouting Klan. I do not like him in a room. I do not like him in Cancun. I do not like him playing ball. I do not like his face at all.
See, this is creepy and pathetic. It's pathetic and also creepy and insidious, because every clip they just showed, every word they just showed is totally true. It's absolutely true. And this isn't a refutation of any of that. It's just we're literally going to make fun of you.
And do it by doing a Dr. Seuss rhyme, like
yeah, like literal playground stuff. Like
I wish he lose his cushy job. That man Ted Cruz is a king knob.
Like you said, that's why stuff's more hardcore nowadays.
And knob, that's a Britishism. See.
But here's the thing. It is
cheer, yes.
Oh.
Cheer, yes, seals.
True. You have probably heard people yelling about critical race theory on TV for more than
This is what the kettle logic that they parse out here. There's little bits of it where it's like right back to back to back, but the kettle logic really is kind of extended across the whole entire thing, which I don't know if we'll even be able to get to.
than a year now, and people have been listening to that noise, especially judging by what's been happening at school board meetings across the country.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna before we even get into it, I do have to show. I'm gonna go over kettle logic one more time. Just real fast.
I like the kettle logic.
And it comes from Derrida. Look, you can rescue Derrida a little bit. See, Jacques Derrida. Talking about Freud. A guy comes back, Freud relates the story of a man who was accused by his neighbor of having returned a kettle in a damaged condition. And the three arguments he offers are, he returned the kettle undamaged, it was already damaged when he borrowed it, that he had never borrowed it in the first place. Those three things, you can't argue all three of those things at the same time. Doesn't make sense.
I've seen it on the national scale, and it's happened to me in person in the room of the kettle logic with CRT. Like my brother, inside of half an hour, went from "there's no such thing as CRT" to "well, of course there is. It's fine."
It's not in schools,
and everything in between. Yeah,
like you'll see, it's not in schools, but here's some teachers who talk about when they were teaching it in schools, and it's fine and it's good. And not only is it good, we need more of it. And
the Western culture and values that brought forth Christianity in the founding documents.
See, it's a Christian thing.
Both sides are going to do their level of nut picking. That's just what you do. But they made sure to pick very, very specific speakers because they could have chosen very multicultural. In fact, some of the main leaders and people who have names in this stuff now are very multicultural people. But we'll watch these random people at school board.
We'll show white Christians.
Are being called evil
And slightly goofy looking ones that sound a little unhinged.
and racist.
I'm not co-parenting with the government. It is not your job to force these ideas onto my child.
The narrative in this country is that we're all inherently racist, and I'm about sick of it.
It's a Marx.
What's funny is like they're not even like they're nut picking, and even the nuts they pick aren't nutty.
Yeah.
You know?
No, they're all saying basically true things.
Theology, and we all know it. All of these lessons have the intent to make our children feel disgust towards our nation.
That's true.
They're trying to make it like seem like it's a Karen thing or something like that, but every single one of them is speaking absolute truth.
Yeah.
A racist country. We elected Obama for 2 terms.
Wait, hold on. America can't be racist because of Obama? I don't know
Yeah.
if you remember the 2008
Yeah, no,
election.
really it is. Like the way that they claim that America is racist, it doesn't make sense that we'd elect Obama. Although they have, I mean, you were there. I know you saw that. I don't know if you remember, but everybody's seen it. But I mean, the actual claim was made directly to me by a Mormon guy. I think you know who I'm talking about. I think he's a doctor in Southern California, but he kicks around the ex-Mormon scene. And he said, like talking about Candace Owens, that Republicans are so racist that they will occasionally vote for a black woman just as cover for their racism. You know, like they literally will say that, like, oh, the only reason that so many white people voted for Obama is that they are actually racist.
That's what the whole thing is. Like the people argued with me in that race Marxism video that I did, that definitely talks about the things that come right out of the critical race theory, out of their own words, out of their own books, that you can go research yourself. That's the nice stuff about like empirical studies. You can go find out yourself. But they're saying I sound like a conspiracy theorist. I'm calling out the conspiracy. Critical race theory is a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
It
no,
really
like
is.
You can literally just take like white and system and play a game where you take Nazi ideology and just replace white with Jew and, you know, patriarchy with Zionism. Yeah, you can pretty well interchange the words and it all fits. It'll all just nest together perfectly.
And any sort of counterfactual will have some sort of windy, twisty explanation to it, like how did you vote Obama? And there's going to be some conspiracy theory description of how that could have happened to explain it, just to keep the critical theory alive.
The reason that there were some destitute poor Jews that suffered a lot is that Zionism needed to keep some Jews down to make it look like they weren't actually making the whole world to benefit them. You just do it. It's like, it's amazing how easily it works. And you could just, you immediately sound like a Nazi. Just take critical theory, replace white with Jew, and there you go.
But things got pretty racist back then. People kept saying he was born in Kenya.
Not a racist thing. Not racist.
Hillary Clinton.
Kenya is a nation. There's nothing racist about saying somebody was born in Kenya.
Hillary
Richard Dawkins was born in Kenya. You know that?
Hillary Clinton's campaign said that. That's where it started.
Yeah, people said he was a secret Muslim, and then a few.
Hillary Clinton's campaign.
Not a race. Not a racist statement. Islam is not a race.
But I would agree that, like, Hillary Clinton's campaign was very, very bad about this stuff.
Well, no, there's no doubt that Hillary Clinton's campaign were ignorant, racist, and bigots.
Yeah,
that's absolutely true.
It got picked
these
up
are not
later
examples
as a
of
good
racism.
Talking point by Donald Trump, but that was Hillary Clinton's campaign that started all that stuff.
But he's also like he's repeating a thing that, like, and again, it's the iron law of woke projection, where they can't even hide their ignorance and bigotry. And it reminds me, like, many years ago when I drove for Lyft, and some guy got into my car, and I picked him up at the university, and he was like taking his headphones out. He's like, "Sorry, I was just listening to a thing." I'm like, "Oh, what were you listening to?" He said, "Oh, I was listening to something about Donald Trump," and it was, I think, while Donald Trump was president. And I'm like, "Oh, what are they saying?" He's like, "Oh, he's talking about how he's a racist." And I said, like, I think Donald Trump is a narcissist, and I think he's a psychopath. I don't think he necessarily cares who he hurts, but he's not a racist. And the guy immediately goes like, "Well, what about the Muslim ban? Islam isn't a race." He's like, they're
The
mostly
band of the
Arab.
countries that
And
were
and I'm like,
picked out
no,
by
they're mostly not.
Obama's.
And then he says, well, they're mostly brown. No, I mean, I guess maybe but if you really think
There
that
was no Muslim
that
ban too.
if you
There
really
was
think
7
that
countries
Berbers and
banned.
Indonesians comprise a race, you
Uh-huh.
know, but but that thing is like they really are so ignorant that so for them we're like, well, yeah, Muslims are mostly brown. Jesus Christ, okay.
Plus, that was 7 different countries that were picked out by the Obama administration as terror threats. They weren't. It was not a Muslim ban.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia was never banned.
So let's just agree to disagree on that one, shall we?
Okay, we shall.
That first meeting was in Loudoun County, Virginia, and it got so out of hand that the meeting was shut down early. And one guy passionately railing against CRT was arrested for trespassing, only to pop up on Tucker Carlson the very next day.
How outrageous. You should go listen to what happened to the guy on that.
Yeah, I wonder if there's any connection.
Clearly, a lot of people are getting very mad about critical race theory right now. And instinctively, you probably know it's a manufactured panic.
It is a manufactured panic? Is that what it is?
Instinctively. No, because because he's talking to people that are already filled with the spirit of wokeness. So they understand instinctively that anything that the right is concerned about is obviously either just doing Nazism or stupid anti-science, ignorant conspiracy mongering.
This face.
Those are the options.
This face looks panicked to me. They're panicked that this has become a panic.
Yeah.
But the fact is, the fear around it is having real effects. Last year, Glenn Young.
Oh, is it causing harm? It's probably causing harm.
That's probably what's going to
being critical of critical race theory is causing harm. It's doing real world violence.
Race in Virginia after repeatedly promising that on his first day in office he'd ban CRT from being taught in schools.
That's a real world consequence.
Oh my God! Banning it in schools?
A Republican got voted in. A real world consequence.
Multiple states have passed laws outlawing the teaching of it, and Republicans
read the laws.
Are likely to make it a major focus of the midterms. When it comes to critical race theory, think of it like Rihanna's pregnancy. Even if you...
This is his Family Guy comedy. Yeah. Like all of his comedy. And Seth Meyers does the same thing now because he picked up on it. It's just straight deadpan politics to your face, non sequitur to a joke. So it's like, it's like that time that me and my friends, whatever, and that has nothing to do with the story.
No, and it's like, because the other thing about this whole thing is like, we're 3 minutes into this, and like, he could have already summarized critical race theory and done it totally honestly, but he's not going to do that. In fact, I'm going to bet that nowhere in this episode does they actually get into what critical race theory is about.
You bet correctly.
Think it has nothing to...
Well, he gives the typical MSNBC answer that it's just a way to examine history different.
No, because that's a lie. That's a canard.
Yeah.
I like that word canard, because a canard is an argument that the person using it knows is wrong. Like when Scientology say like, no, it's a self-help system. It's like, no, no, it's not.
To do with you, believe me, you're going to be hearing a lot.
Yeah, speed this up.
Yes.
Lots about it this year. So given that, we thought tonight we'd take a step back and look at what critical race theory is and isn't.
No, you won't.
Why the panic around it has spread and what the consequences might...
You won't cover that very well.
...be for everyone involved. And I realise some of you may already know what CRT is. After all, explainers on this have become...
So much buzz, but what is critical race theory? What critical race theory means and why it's igniting debate.
One of the most common sites on the internet, along with mediocre Wordle scores and ugly monkey JPEGs sold by and for dipshits. But many are still...
Non-sequitur joke.
Very confused. A recent survey found an overwhelming majority of US...
I agree about him, though. I agree with him on the NFT stuff.
residents have a hard time articulating exactly what CRT is. And that even goes for some of those who've been yelling about it the loudest.
I've never figured out what critical race theory is, to be totally honest, after you're talking about it. They're teaching that some races are morally superior to others, that some are inherently sinful and some are inherently saintly, and that's immoral to teach that because it's wrong.
Wow. I don't know if
He's outraged at that.
I've ever seen a person confidently complain about something just seconds after admitting they don't know shit about it.
That's not really what he's doing there.
Yeah, and also it's like, I mean, I don't have to read everything L. Ron Hubbard wrote to know that Scientology is bullshit.
Yeah.
I like there's just a few things you have to tell me, and I'm like, okay, well that's enough,
I saw this one guy, and he was actually a lefty guy. I can't remember who it was, but he's some reporter. But he had a good argument. He said any sort of like school of thought, tell somebody like, give me two of the top primary sources, like the two of the top best people of it. I'll read those two things, and if those two things aren't enough to explain to me what the thing is, I'm dealing with a mud bath. That's all I'm dealing with, and that's just true. I think that's just absolutely true.
But then the other sneaky thing is that critical race theory is deliberately wordy and confusing. They take in fact, somebody I wish I already forgot it. I learned a word that is enclouding. That's not the actual word. Like and nebulize or something is is like to obfuscate. But yeah, like no, that part of the reason why it's very hard for anybody to articulate what CRT is that the people who even the proponents will tell you like, well, it's this and it's this and it's this. It's not that, but it is this. But the person did say that it is this, but it's not that.
And then there's like the level of all the double meanings of all these words that seem like words that you might know, but they have a specialized meaning for that word, which is very culty. But then beyond that too, there's a level of if you say it in agreement, yes, that's correct. If you say it in disagreement or in doubt, no, that's not exactly right. And you can say the exact same sentence.
Yeah, no, it's like, I mean, Marxists. That's what I've learned about Marxism. It's like if you agree with it, like, yeah, that's Marxism. If you disagree with it, you don't even understand what Marxism is. Like
Totally true for Hegel too. That's true for Hegel all the way back.
Yeah, in your podcast, like in the comments, we got almost immediately like, well, actually, Frankfurt School were critical of Marx. It's like, oh, for God's sake.
And I love the thing too, where they're all like, well, those guys can't be Marxists because Marx was a Hegelian, and like you understand that like you're calling Marx a Hegelian is the same thing as me calling the later people a Marxist. Like there's somebody who follows that school of philosophy to do their crap, and Marx did not get Hegel perfect, but you're fine calling him a Hegelian. The later Marxists, the people who altered Marxism into neo-cultural Marxism, then later race Marxism, we put that moniker alongside with it. They're doing Marxism, they're just tweaking it a little bit. And if Marx can be a Hegelian, they can be Marxists.
Figured out how a car engine works, to be honest, but there's a chimpanzee under the hood turning a crank, and when you press the accelerator, it pokes him with a sharp stick and makes him crank faster, and it's immoral to do that because it's wrong.
Was that a non sequitur joke? I didn't even...
Who, like, what's going on? What is their writing room like? Who are their joke people? I can't, and it's sad because like I think the show. I remember in the earliest days the show wasn't this bad. It wasn't like this, or maybe I'm misremembering, but it seems like it didn't used to be quite so bad. It's just
probably
bad.
worth reviewing, but I mean, it's been years since I started seeing him just be a complete hack.
I mean, like
one side of stuff, and then realized that it was just filled with non sequitur jokes to the side of it.
Because like Gutfield, like because he's supposed to be the Fox funny guy, and he is not funny.
Yeah,
and he has terrible writers. But he still tells better. The jokes have more craft to them than this by a long shot.
Yeah,
and
it's
then
not
Crowder
the
also like
stuff.
Yeah, Crowder also not very funny. But
I think it's
still there's more craft there. Yeah,
it's almost impossible to be funny nowadays. I'm like I only really laugh at they're like. Some of the Freedom Tune stuff can be funny. Some of it misses. Some of the guys over at the B what are they called? The B
Babylon B.
Babylon B. They can be funny as crap. They can also miss sometimes too. And then Kyle Dunnigan. Kyle Dunnigan is about the only person holding down true stuff, like true satirical funny stuff nowadays.
Yeah, no, like. He does Ben Shapiro, and it's excellent.
Yeah.
He does such a great Ben Shapiro.
His Biden, the way he does Biden talk is just unmatched. Like Saturday Night can't match that. They really try.
I wish that, like, I mean, they've only done a couple of segments of "What's My Talking About." Google Kyle Dunnigan. What's my talking about? What's my talking about?
What's my
All right, what's
talking
I
about?
talking about? And literally, this is what
Not. What's my talking about?
and they literally just take an actual clip of Joe Biden speaking and try to figure out what he's talking about.
It's so funny because he gets Ryan Felipe on there one time to try to guess what he's talking about. It's so
Oh
funny.
god, yeah, it is. It's so weird that Kyle Dunnigan, like in his house with the baby, just he has it with a baby producing, and like, and
Kurt
he
Metzger
is
cracks me up too.
so much funnier. Like those guys are 30 minutes of Kyle Dunnigan is more laughs than the last 10 years of Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, I
Easily.
agree.
Like just easy
Metzger's
peasy.
whole channel I like. Metzger's awesome. Metzger, I think I watch Metzger. I'm like, Metzger's got like the same YouTube diet I do. He goes through like all the same people I go through, and but he's got some different views on it.
He's fun because like he pops up on Jimmy Dore. You know?
He pops up on Neurotic. He pops up on all sorts of stuff.
Ex-Mormons would like to hear the story. You just look up.
And he used to write for Sacha Baron Cohen. Yeah, he used to write for Sacha Baron Cohen.
But
yeah, he wrote for Sacha Baron Cohen's show, and he used to write for Amy
Schumer. But yeah, no, the interesting to ex-Mormon tie-in, just talking about Kurt Metzger is, and look it up, is that he does bits on it. He was raised by Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
And he does stand up about it. It's funny. He's a funny dude.
Yeah, it's totally worth listening, catching up on all his stuff if you're
if you want to laugh,
Mormon person.
We're here reviewing the comedy show John Oliver's last week tonight, but we're so desperate for something to laugh about, we will talk about actual funny people doing funny stuff on YouTube right now. Yeah. Kurt Metzger, Kyle Dunnigan. There you go.
But obviously, that is not what critical race theory is. It's the name given to a body of legal scholarship that began in the 1970s.
Now he's reading hard.
To understand why racism and inequality persisted after the civil rights movement. The core
No, it's not. It's not that though. It's not even that. Like, I mean, they might try to say that they're trying to understand. No, it starts from the premise.
Making the claim. It's making the claim that even if it seems like, or even if you have all this proof that it didn't, no, you got to look harder. You got to look harder at that.
From the point of view of critical race theory, the only thing to understand is that it is a product of white supremacist systems of white supremacy systems.
The Civil Rights Act itself was a covering agent. It was a hiding agent. It was a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, so he's already like, they're even when he tries to be like the actual definition, he's wrong. That's wrong.
Racism is not merely the product of individual bias or prejudice, but also something that is embedded in legal systems and policies. As for Tucker's notion that it teaches that some races are superior to others, or that parents claim.
It does do that, and I'd say inherently what it pushes across is what it seems like all these white people are complaining about. It really, in a way, tries to say that the white people are supreme. So you got all these white people complaining that they're being called that their race is supreme. That's what you got there, John Oliver.
It's like, let's see if I can find it.
And I know there's a million construals and all that, but the way it plays out pragmatically is it states that the white construct is supreme, is dominant to the black construct.
So see if you can guess what prominent American religious leader who is commonly considered an honored guest and all kinds of events, like not Gladys Knight's, Aretha Franklin's funeral. This guy was there, just kind of there. Countless times over the years, I have explained that I never referred to Judaism as a gutter religion, but clearly referred to the machinations of those who hide behind the shield of Judaism while using unjust political means to achieve their objectives. This was distilled in New York tabloids and other media saying, I call Judaism a gutter religion. As a Muslim, I revere Abraham, Moses, and all the prophets whom Allah sent to the children of Israel. I believe in the scriptures brought by these. It's the same. Anyway, the point, it's Louis Farrakhan. But this is him saying, I don't hate Jews. I just think that they're terrible. I believe in scriptures brought by these prophets and the laws of God and expressed in the Torah. I would never refer to the revealed word of Allah, the basis of Jewish faith, as dirty or gutter. I mean, he did. You know, Jude, as well as I, that the revealed word of Allah comes as a message from Allah to purify us. Where does he say? This isn't even the one. Like,
There's descriptions because we pulled them
yeah.
up. I've been in arguments with these other things because they try to say that these critical theorists are more careful with their language than to say it like that, and they do get a little bit construed with it. But it never takes more than like one step away to get to a practitioner where they lose all nuance. But even then, we can pull all sorts of stuff where Derek Bell, who was a supporter of Farrakhan and is considered the godfather of critical race theory, Faces of the Bottom Well, he talks about the lowest of the low white person is still on top of and trampling down the highest of the high black person. That is white supremacy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, oh no, we're not saying one race is better than the other. It's like, no, you're just saying everything around it. Well, it reminds me of we never got it. It's a clip from Mormon Stories a few weeks ago where he's like, we're not saying that Mormonism is a cult. We're just saying that it does this thing like this other cult, and it's like this other cult, and it's a lot like this cult, but we're not saying it's just like, no, you
and
are.
Then, of course, all these other times far away from that sentence, I'll just go ahead and drop it's a cult.
Oh yeah, by the way, it's a cult. But yeah, and it's like, I don't know, it's kind of weird. Like, what's going on? Why are they having this cognitive dissonance? Why can't they just come out and say like, well, yeah, white like, why can't John Oliver just say like, well, of course, all of human history is created by white people to benefit white people at the expense of everyone else? Just say it.
That it teaches kids to hate America. None of that is remotely true.
Yes, it is.
It's true.
It is true.
It's totally true.
As Kimberly Crenshaw, one of CRT's leading scholars, points out.
Leading?
Wait.
She's the scholar. She's the one who coined it. She's the one who
gathered all
the work.
I had it on good authority from left-wing news organizations that CRT was invented as a boogeyman by white supremacist alt-right extremist QAnoners.
Yeah.
And now you're telling me that there's a scholar?
It's a fake. It's a manufactured panic.
Critical race theory just says, let's pay attention to what has happened in this country and how what has happened in this country is continuing to create differential outcomes so we can become that country that we say we are.
No.
How do you become that country?
That really is just like, Scientology is just saying that we can give you tools that will help you achieve your goals.
Marxism.
What's wrong with that?
Marxism is just looking critically at the capitalism around us to say, why isn't everything perfectly equal, and how can we get there? Through a revolution. And that's how we get there. Just how are we going to do this? We can work towards it, people. There's no incrementalism. There's no getting there bit by bit. We must have a bloody revolution.
Yeah.
So critical race theory is
the due process is a form of white supremacy. That's another one.
Yeah, I've got the Smithsonian poster here.
Not anti-patriotic. In fact, it is more patriotic than those who are opposed to it because we believe in the 13th and the 14th and the 15th Amendment. We believe in the promises of equality, and we know.
No, you don't. You believe in passing an amendment that oversees all other amendments. That's what you guys
believe that the promise of equality is white supremacy.
You believe
in equity. You believe in a very different thing.
A tribunal, an amendment that passes the tribunal that oversees and is able to discuss and be the overseer. I mean, we should pull it up with the proposal by Ibram X. Kendi of the amendment.
No, we can't get there.
It's basically the equivalent of the Ayatollah. Like what Ibram Kendi proposes would be an American race Ayatollah.
Can't confront and talk honestly about inequality.
Yeah, she's right. I need to know.
Talk honestly. If any of this starting point, if any of this was academic theory, talking about it, discussing it, arguing it would be allowed and be okay. But they have also written into the theory that you can't argue or discuss about that. Is using the master's tools. That is using white supremacy. Is the debate or discussion around it is white supremacy itself.
Yeah, and even if you don't believe in critical race theory and pay attention, like let's say you're like a Thomas Sowell who is 90 years old and has spent 70 of those years carefully collecting economic data exactly on the subject of discrepancy and disparity, like he's paying attention, but because he has the wrong consciousness, he's actually just another black face of white supremacy.
He's out of the conversation. We're wanting to have an honest conversation, but you can't be in it.
Yeah, the guy graduated from Harvard in the pre-civil rights era has nothing to say about race and disparity in America.
14th and 15th Amendments are, that alone might be a good sign that we don't talk about this stuff in school.
I know what they are, John Oliver. But we don't talk about it. I don't ever get like why this.
And also, like, we did talk about it in school. We talked about it in school. Oh my God, we talked about it in school.
About what our culture was.
Yeah.
School's enough. And to be clear, CRT is graduate level legal theory. So
to be clear,
no, it's not.
Unless your 5-year-old is currently pursuing a law degree, they're not reading Kimberly Crenshaw.
Steven Crowder debunked this video too, and they pulled a video of Crenshaw. I can't go through it to pull it now, although I guess I could.
Yeah.
But she says, I pulled before already on this, where she talks about it being in, well, just my very last.
Was it 1995 where she's like, oh, it quickly spread into the schools, and that was in 1995 that
and
she
then
wrote that.
Crowder had a video of her, I think it's in that same interview, because I swear she's in the same clothes, of her talking about how it got into the schools and how they moved it into schools, and they had all this intention to bring it in there.
Yeah.
But critics of it argue that the ideas behind CRT are being taught in schools and often present a hyperbolically distorted version of.
But they'll do the kettle logic here too. We don't have to pull those. We don't have to pull those other videos because he'll get to it for us.
I was like, he's about to set up. He's setting it up as though it's not true, but often portray hyperbolic. Go on. It's going to be something entirely.
And a key person here is this man, a conservative activist named Christopher Rufo. He claims CRT is actually a revolutionary.
He's not a conservative activist. He's a journalist.
Overturn the principles of the Declaration and destroy the remaining structure of the Constitution, which it just isn't. It isn't that.
See, that's that sneaky thing there. Like, Christopher Rufo is not an activist, and also like the idea, like these guys are using like activists. Like there's a little bit of a smear in there. It's like, well, you can't trust this guy. He's an activist. Oh, really? Oh my God, this guy, like, he's just John Dehlin times 1,000 powers.
So Rufo, John repeated the basic MSNBC talking points, falsely claimed that CRT is only graduate level legal theory and never taught in K-12 schools. Luckily, the majority of parents of all racial backgrounds see through those lies and oppose CRT. And he gives this whole briefing book, which he hasn't labeled out. Part of the problem with Christopher Rufo is he isn't just some activist. He is a journalist, and he's collected loads and 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 loads examples of it being taught in schools, examples of different school board members talking about it, examples of books saying that they're going through that theoretical lens to do things. I will openly say that it's far worse, like in the coastal blue states, but it is pushing into other places as well. It's definitely pushing into Utah. But and we see it in all these different little ways. But most of the issues that, and very, very specific outward activistic examples that he has are things that are going on in California and in New York and maybe Virginia and those types of areas. But it is pushing into everywhere.
So I pull up Christopher Rufo's Wikipedia page. It's just you can't make this stuff up. First thing is that Christopher Rufo, born blah blah blah, is an American conservative activist. And then the next paragraph, it says he works at the Manhattan. The next paragraph, he is known for his activism against critical race theory. Oh, so that's it. That's his activism, is he's critical of, which he says, quote, has pervaded every aspect of the federal government. That's true. And poses, quote, an existential threat to the United States. That's true. And is anti-American. That's true. Next paragraph, critical race theory considers the idea that racism is systemic in the United States. No, it doesn't. It states, it posits immediately as a matter of fact,
of belief, of true belief, of original state of everything. And not only that,
consider it for a second. It's not about considering that.
Not
idea.
only
it's
that,
about beginning from the assumption.
Beyond that, it is inside of its own theory the primary reason of all inequality. So if you think there's other versions of inequality in the world, you don't understand that it's filtered through the primary source of inequality, which is race inequality. It is the champion of all inequality. There's no other, all inequality comes through the race inequality. So here's Rufo's briefing book, which you should go through. I don't think we'll hit all of these, but these are all the things that they're lying about or not describing. Key concepts that it is race essentialism. You get some theorists and they'll say it's structural determinism, which will have this different construal of saying how it's not technically like essentialism. It's It's opposed essentialism, which is a Marxist construal. It's how Marxists construe that you are essentially a bourgeoisie or essentially a proletariat.
No, and I mean, it's also, I mean, it's just playing word games. It's like when Mormons talk about the temple and they say, it's not secret, it's sacred.
Yeah.
It's literally
it's race essentialism. It's just they call it opposed upon because they want to do the postmodern thing that race can be deconstructed, but you can't deconstruct this race because we have imposed racialized bodies.
We're saying the exact same thing, but because the words we choose are the words that we say make it okay.
All whites are racist. That is true. There's going to be all the construals again, but it's still just true. America is fundamentally racist. It is true. That's the whole point of the 1619 Project, is to try to reimagine, the word they like to use, the founding moments of our history as being a moment founded in racism. We were founded in and through racism. Collective guilt, opposition to equality under the law. So their examinations of the law aren't just the concepts of, boy, they figured out ways to keep us down with redlining and stuff like that. It's not that. It's all civil rights. All civil rights. Unlike traditional civil rights, which embraces incrementalism and step-by-step progress, critical race theory questions the very foundations of the liberal order. The very foundations of the liberal order are racist, including equality theory.
And I also like that, again, there's still being kind of softer when we say it questions. It's just like, well, we're just, no, it says that they immediately answer the question.
They're suspicious of liberal mainstay, namely rights. They're suspicious of rights. They're suspicious. It's not this like little technical detailed law studying these like little moments. This is illiberal. Liberal law can study those moments of where something had disparate impact or had little details that were missed that did end up affecting races differently. You can study that through liberal legal studies.
I wonder if anywhere in public school today is anybody showing 12 Angry Men, because that was a mainstay when I was in school.
Yeah.
And because 12 Angry Men is very liberal. It's very classically liberal, very pro due process and pro Bill of Rights. So that show is antithetical to CRT. I wonder if anybody shows that anymore.
Yeah. Well,
position to meritocracy. It is. It does say that.
Yeah. Opposition to equality under law, suspicion of rights, opposition to meritocracy. I'll pull up the thing the Smithsonian got raked over the coals for, that they were putting out as their part of their critical race training, which is similar to the way they put the trainings in schools, because it doesn't come out as studying legal theory. I keep making the same point that we learned the Civil Rights Act of 64 when we were kids. None of us ever once sat there and read the Civil Rights Act of 64. Nobody taught us anything about the torts, about which Supreme Court justice was in it, so this, or that, the other. We learned the concept of I have a dream. We learned the Civil Rights Act that way, how you teach it to kids. We didn't learn. It was legal. It was legal. It was Supreme Court, high-level legal theory. Supreme Court's doctorate-level stuff, man. We learned the Civil Rights Act in elementary school, that doctorate-level law.
Yeah, no, I remember learning about all of this stuff, the basics of civics. Like one of them was secret ballot. Like, why is it a law that we have secret ballot? Well, that sounds kind of silly, but then they explain well, it's very important because if people know who you're voting for, they can intimidate you. And I immediately understood that. And it's still very high level law. Like election law is debated all the time. It's talked about in law schools. Well, I guess nobody really understands the idea of secret ballots. By the way, have you ever learned about how elections happened in the Soviet Union?
No.
Because the way it worked is because they had elections, right? It was the democracy. It was the People's Republic, right?
The only true democracy. Marxism is the only true democracy.
And the way it worked is that and everybody was required to vote because they're that democratic that everybody gets to decide. Everybody gets to decide no matter what, whether they want to decide or not. And you're given a ballot, and if you left the ballot, to leave the ballot blank, was a party vote.
Mm.
If you wanted to change your ballot, you could, and you do that by writing on it or scratching out a name of the regular party in that. And to do that, there was a little area provided where you would go behind a curtain. Otherwise, you could just drop your ballot in the box outside. And so, like, it was very obvious. Like, anybody who didn't vote party, you knew because they went behind the curtain, right? And so, like, obviously, everybody just voted party. Like, it's like, and can you imagine if the Soviet Union had a law that mandated secret ballots? Because they didn't have that very important law. And somehow I understand this concept despite having never graduated with a law degree. It's amazing.
Everything is dumb, 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 dumb.
Dumb, dumb. Restriction of free speech, yes, they do. They are all for that. But
Active
Christopher
racial
Rufo
discrimination.
is a Republican activist.
Opposite of
all the Republican
meritocracy.
activism.
Well, he comes from a right-wing think tank, the Manhattan Project, but he is a journalist. Restriction
Manhattan
of free
Project built a
speech.
bomb.
Oops, Manhattan Institute.
Yeah.
Restriction of free speech. That is true. Let me just go find this and read this.
Abolition of whiteness. Yes.
And it's all true. You can find it in their own writings. Neo-segregation.
I like neo-segregation. Like, just drop the neo. You can drop the neo. They mean segregation.
It's one of those things I was going to pull up. I have the screenshot of it, but I'll pull some of these other things. But let me show you some of the neo-segregation stuff here in a second. Anti-capitalism and forced redistribution of property, Marxism, winning the language war, redefining words, all sorts of stuff. It's all just using stories. That's part of their whole thing. They openly announced they're into historical revisionism. Like 1619 Project, they say, we do historical revisionism. That's part of our activism.
Yeah.
They move to government. They're activistic. I mean,
they believe this whole thing that, like, because in the West, we have this weird idea that most of the writing systems used in European languages are derived from Greek.
Mm-hmm.
Just white people decided that because they wanted to make a story about how white European Greeks invented writing, so if white people are allowed to just make up stories about the history of language, well, they could just make up stories. It's very simple. Oh, there we go.
For instance, where it intentionally racializes circumstances, it claims that systemic racism has already imposed race on those circumstances to which it is merely responding. Thus, in Orwellian fashion, critical race theory is it calls using critical race theory to racialize something that is facially neutral, deracializing it. One example of deracializing is when critical race theory segregates people into different racial caucuses or affinity groups, and they call this desegregation. Critical race theory's justification: systemic poverty already was there. The segregation was already there in your hidden liberal. What's the term for it?
That's what I just saying. Like, it's okay to rewrite history because they say, oh, history's already been formed by systemic racism. So
yeah, so we had the desegregation. That was our liberal, sneaky interest convergence way of making it seem like we were all integrated. But there was actually segregation in that integration. And so to desegregate, we need to segregate.
Whiteness, it was so racist that they made it a law that made it illegal to segregate by race. That's just how racist they are.
Conspiracy theory, folks.
Yeah, it's totally. Oh my God. Have we even made it 10 minutes? Oh no.
I'll fast forward some because we already answered a bunch of it there with that. Just clicking on the screen.
In the wake of the George Floyd protests, just as America was being news began.
So they bring up Rufo and they talk about Rufo helping getting Trump's thing passed. Trump passed an executive order, and it's just outrageous that Rufo got him to do that. But you should go read. There was a guy named what's his name? Daniel Johnson. He's a guy who exposed how they were pushing critical race theory inside of our weapons building firms. Lockheed Martin had a bunch of critical race theory trainings, and this guy, his name was, I think it was Daniel Johnson. No, it was like Peterson. I forget it, but Yeah, you should find. Just look up Christopher Rufo. Will have the story on it if you go to Christopher Rufo's stuff.
Facebook keeps showing me ads for, I think it might be Lockheed Martin, and it's all just these woke signaling diversity ads, and they're incredibly creepy.
Well, he exposed the guy who came out. He was a whistleblower from the inside. Christopher Rufo helped him show the stuff. It's one of the first places where Christopher Rufo jumped on the stuff, because over like a year and a half ago, I don't think Christopher Rufo knew anything about this. It's like James Lindsay and I and Flip were way more on it than Christopher Rufo ever was. But Christopher Rufo was the one who got it out into the mainstream media. But people like me or Flip or James Lindsay for years were saying that it's gonna bust, like the blink moment from Malcolm Gladwell is gonna happen. You know, there's gonna be a tipping point into the Malcolm Gladwell, and it's gonna get picked up on, and it happened.
Yeah.
And now everybody's acting like, oh, right wing just invented this yesterday. No, we watched it coming for years. I had a fight with my drummer about it 4 or 5 years ago. I could bring him on and tell him to say, what did we fight about 4 or 5 years ago? You and I talked about this, and you were just like, no, that is not true. They do not say that. This stuff isn't coming. I'm like, yes, it is. It is all true. It is all there.
For that lesson.
It was pretty tough.
Yeah.
Oh, this is them talking about people doing bad
human
race training in schools. Kettle logic.
And make mistakes. Frankly, I'm surprised they don't make more. They wake up insanely early and spend all day.
So this is them talking about teachers who talked about race in the schools. Kettle logic, you know?
Yeah. Oh my God, it's so wicked. Oh, they're going to do Florida. They're going to do a...
This is them complaining about people using voucher programs to go to private schools.
Southern
segregation academies. And some of those taking advantage of school choice today sure seem to be doing some heavy indoctrination of their own. Take Florida. It is one of the states that allows public money to go to voucher schools. And a few years back, an investigation into some of them found commonly used textbooks that downplayed the horrors of slavery. One of them is this one, America, Land I Love, which has all the kind of bullshit that you would expect. The Civil War was fought for states' rights. But it also states that during the antebellum period, the slave who knew Christ had more freedom than a free person who did not know the Savior, which is not just offensive, it is profoundly stupid. Any kid reading that absolute trombone slide of a sentence.
I'd like to get a hold of that book and see. I bet you it's got dumb stuff in it, but I bet you they're also misrepresenting that right there. It's like
probably. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Christians are that dumb, or at least they can be, for sure. But then also, like, you're obviously talking about a Christian school. And
but I bet you it's like some quote by some person said this thing, you know.
Great. It sounds less like something you'd find in a textbook and more like something you find crocheted on a throw pillow in Paula Dean's living room. So if you want to talk about racial indoctrination of school kids, this might be a better place to start. But the thing is, even a manufactured panic.
I agree. Let's get that
no, it's like that. Yeah, like
let's get critical. I want all the religious stuff out of the schools.
Yeah, John Oliver. Let's get all bad religious conspiratorial ideas like that can't be funded with public education money. Well, there we go. We just solved it.
Those parents at school board meetings are genuinely angry, and as any little league coach knows, once you reach a critical mass of angry white parents, there will be.
Oh yeah, the white ones. They're the ones that every coach is particularly worried about.
This is them saying this teacher reading Ta-Nehisi Coates to his kids was doing nothing wrong. Ta-Nehisi Coates is an idiot. He's a complete idiot, and if he was reading,
he's a racist idiot.
I've read enough of Ta-Nehisi Coates that if they were reading Ta-Nehisi Coates to my kids at school, I would be pissed.
A pretty decent response to that criticism.
I think, to me, the varying viewpoint is Kyla Janae Lacey and is Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Is that the varying viewpoint? Yeah. I can find some other varying viewpoints that are outrageous that aren't what those white parents think or Ta-Nehisi Coates, and you're not going to be down with those varying viewpoints being put in that school.
Those are perspectives that my students aren't exposed to on a daily basis.
I can get them exposed to some viewpoints that neither of you like, and it's a whole different viewpoint.
That's because we live in that white dominant evangelical environment.
Right. When you live in a mostly white environment, the voices of black people can be the varying point of view. And not just on current events, either on lots of things that white people otherwise assume, even trivial ones. Like,
he's a
racist. It's okay to go out in a blizzard in shorts, and if I argue with this cop, I can probably get out of a ticket. And
he thinks white is a point of view and not white is a different point of view.
Fun and stress-free activity. Ooh, the 1930s. I can't wait to look around. Unfortunately, though, those situations...
Very
only likely to become
funny.
more common. Since January of last year, 37 states have introduced bills or taken other steps that would restrict teaching critical race theory or limit how teachers can discuss racism. And
Why did he put it in? Why did he put it in scare quotes? We've already established that it's real.
Because he's going to establish that it's like they all say that it's too broad. The definitions are too broad, even though if you read the stuff that they're not going to put on here, every single one of those bills I've read, the main pages of every single one of these, I've clicked on all the different states and read the bills, and the bills always say in them, we are not talking about the history of racism or slavery in the country.
Yeah.
We are talking about these issues, namely scapegoating an entire race.
Yeah. No, everybody on the left that is complaining about these bills is either deliberately lying or just playing dumb, in that everybody in America understands the difference between teaching about the Bible and teaching the Bible.
Yeah.
Everybody understands that difference. None of these laws are to ban talking about critical race theory. No.
More than a little flimsy. Here is one Tennessee lawmaker explaining why he was pushing for his state's bill.
Listen to the following quotes from an email forwarded to me concerning a 7-year-old girl in Williamson County. The little girl told her mother, "I'm ashamed that I'm white." The daughter then asked her mother.
So it goes into saying that this situation never happened, wasn't real, because they looked into that guy. The problem is like I was in a living room where I saw a kid complaining about this.
Yeah, it's funny. Like you found one that doesn't check out. Like, well, did you look for any more?
There's kids who've already been exposed to this stuff and already been upset about this stuff, and it's real.
People have published the homework on, like, there's so many cases that are obviously real. This is funny.
Administrators there weren't able to pinpoint any students who might be upset or lessons that trying to outlaw something that they cannot define. Because what are you then going to do? Pass a law saying kids can't feel bad? Well, it turns out, yes, because that is exactly what Tennessee did. They passed a law prohibiting any teaching that would cause discomfort, guilt, anguish, or distress solely because of the individual's race or sex.
This is just projection. This is
what's that?
That's like double reverso projection.
What's outrageous about that? Like, that's technically already in the Civil Rights Act of '64.
Yeah.
Like, so many of these different bills are like, we're writing bills to reiterate the Civil Rights Act of '64.
Yeah, I know, but like, I mean, because James Lindsay puts it. I mean, it's a First Amendment issue. Like, we don't need any new framework or way to think about anything. It is against the law to teach religion in schools. CRT is a religion. It's that simple. But that's all we need. It's unconstitutional to teach it as true. So that there we go.
So then he gets in all this stuff of that they all mention MLK. If you want to watch a really good long ass stream, watch Sitch and Adam talk about. Just this last Sunday, they had a long stream, and even as long as it was full of good information pretty much all the way through. They always kind of tend to wade off towards the end of it because they go on for hours and hours every single Sunday. Sitch and Adam friended. They had an entire stream of the radical left trying to reframe Martin Luther King. Listen to the whole entire stream. It's a good stream, and it will take you all day.
Even with
because they've done it in so many different ways.
Yeah, but even this word woke, they tried to kettle argument the word woke because, they came up with the word. They started using it. It was popped up, like college kids popped up on social media using it. Conservatives looked into it, looked it up, saw what it meant, started using it, and then all these stories about like,
and now it's a pejorative. Now it's a pejorative.
Yeah, like, they made up this crazy idea about woke people. It's like, no, they found your word.
It was in their literary papers.
They understood what you meant by it, and started using it too, and they started taking it seriously.
I saw Paul Vanderklay today. He started calling it like because he's got all these people leaving his church, and they don't walk away; they woke away. I'm gonna woke away from the church.
King himself later put a pretty major asterisk on it.
I must confess that that dream that I had that day has at many points turned into a nightmare. And I've come to see that we have many more difficult days ahead, and some of the old optimism was a little superficial, and now it must be tempered with a solid realism.
Yeah.
That doesn't say what you're saying. You think it says, John.
Yeah,
he never backed off of his liberalism.
Yeah.
He never once did, and listen to that whole entire stream. And there's constant lefties trying to make that claim nowadays. But I don't know how if he'd lived long enough, who knows what he would have kept going into? Oh, he's gonna zing. He's got to make sure to zing Joe Rogan real quick.
I wonder what his ratings are compared to Rogan.
I think it's about it.
Oh yeah, that's one of those things that makes me crazy about these guys, but also, I mean, it just goes to show how much in a bubble they are. Is that like what the left doesn't realize is that anybody who listens to Rogan even a little bit knows that the way the left talk about him is a lie. You know, and even people who listen to Tucker a little bit know that what they're saying is a lie. But like, obviously, it doesn't matter to them. It's it's an unsinkable rubber duck. You know, like James Randi's unsinkable rubber ducks. For these people, like it's an article of faith that Tucker Carlson is secretly a Nazi trying to bring about a white ethno state. Facts be damned.
This is John Stossel's recent episode. I'm not going to show very much of it, but he talks about wokeness getting into the American Medical Association.
How has Stossel, like, that guy is remarkable. He has been the same guy since 30 years? I remember when I was a kid, I tuned into 2020 for the Stossel part, and that was it. And it's like Stossel has been totally consistent. His entire career is just this.
So here's Sitch and Adam. Listen to this. How long is it going to be? 6 hours long, but the last 2 hours they do super chats. I'm telling you, it's like 4 hours. Like they did their research on that one. They don't always do that much research. It's a little bit more BSing around, but they had all the different clips of Martin Luther King holding to his liberalism and how it gets framed by his commies try to steal MLK, and that's been going on a whole lot. There's endless amounts of people trying to make a claim that.
Yeah, I want to find the clip of him basically explaining why being a Christian makes him incompatible with Marxism.
They have that quote, and he says it, and that's all in this. I don't have time to go through it and pull out the specific quotes, but this was a dense episode. Like they really did cover a lot of the details of how some people framed MLK one way, how some claimed him the other way, and actual quotes that came from him. That's a good one there.
That guy is one of the most powerfully stupid and dangerous people in the world.
Steven Crowder, who we both just are already on record that I'll watch Steven Crowder because he actually will do some good stuff and cite and reference the types of stuff. But I agree. Like I don't know how many times like outward laughed at a show. Actually, I have. Pretty rare. Because Dave in the second seat will be a funny guy.
That's what I've noticed. That guy, he's the genuine comedic talent on that panel. But yeah, because I don't like the whole sycophant thing. Like a lot of the shows do. Like Jimmy Dore does it, and Gutfield obviously, but Crowder. But yeah, where you've got three guys in the room whose job it is to occasionally laugh at your jokes. I hate that. It never works. You know, like Norm Macdonald can do that because he's got Adam.
I saw somebody
and Norm Macdonald is actually funny, but
both Trevor Noah and John Oliver really struggled during the pandemic because they didn't have that studio audience laugh going on.
Yes,
and, like, it just really showed on their show.
The first John Oliver from The Lonely, you realize it was like when people take the laugh track off of Big Bang Theory. And it's got no jokes.
They really struggled through that. So they did a bit. I think it was on this episode. I'm not gonna pull it up. I was just gonna try to see if I could see that quote of see where I could see Crenshaw talking for a second. Yeah, I don't see here, but they covered it and they covered some pretty good stuff. It was like the very next morning, although this was it was just a crap episode anyway. That John Oliver episode is crap. So once again, watch that John Oliver episode and think of the kettle logic of that. It's a manufactured crisis. It's not in schools. It is in schools. It is in schools, and sometimes we mess up. It should be in schools. We need to put more of it in schools. Like watch it. Just go all the way through.
It's not racist. It just posits that white people are fundamentally different from everyone else.
This is the Smithsonian put this out, and I think he said something. There was something about it in the John Oliver
rugged individualism.
This is from 1978, Judy Katz, and she was like the OG Robin DiAngelo. And they just
Like,
have all these stupid claims. And this is from the
no, but,
stupid
like, just the
Smithsonian
top one,
Museum.
rugged individualism. Like, my mind just immediately flashed to all those Kurosawa samurai movies.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, Toshiro Mifune was the Japanese face of white supremacy.
It wasn't
as he
ever
played
any.
that story
It
about
wasn't
that
any
rugged
part.
individual.
It wasn't any part of any culture ever until whiteness.
Yeah, remember
But
The Gods Must Be Crazy? And that bushman in Africa runs for days to save his village all by himself.
But
Rugged
this is one of the
individualism. He was
concepts
the
here.
black face of white supremacy.
All this stuff is general precepts and general things that get pushed through critical race theory world, which that's another thing I'll pull up. They mentioned that Christopher Rufo did a sneaky. I've already talked about it before, that he called everything critical race theory. But you can pull up multiple times. Kimberly Crenshaw herself said it's useful to just call it all critical race theory. Kimberly Crenshaw is the one who gave the green light to start doing that and to start pulling it all in. We can pull up her quotes and her statements on that. But this is not, look at this screen here. This is from the Smithsonian Museum. This is not college level studying. This is not college level academic studying. This is a poster. This is a poster with pictures and little dumb ideas in the dumb little pictures. This is critical race theory. This is not college. This is critical race theory. And these types of things taught in this way in little books that are available, that they have proofs of those, a lot of those different little school board meetings where the teachers go to, they had proofs of these little books getting pushed out to these kids of little pictures like this, making claims just like this. It's not studied like law degrees.
Wife is homemaker and subordinate to husband.
Family structure. The nuclear family is whiteness, is white culture.
Christianity is the norm.
Emphasis on the scientific method is white culture.
White culture, Christianity is the norm.
Focusing on anything.
I guess that's probably mostly true for the world. But like, obviously, there's lots of places where, like, because like Bosnia, Albania.
That's right there where the whole thing, why the inconvenient minority of Kenny Zoo.
That's a Protestant work ethic. Hard work is the key to success. That's a Protestant idea.
It's so ridiculous. The reason why all those Asians are kicking our asses all over the place is because they have a stronger work ethic than all of us.
Oh, no, that makes sense, because evangelical Christianity is very popular in South Korea. That must be why they come to our country with nothing and end up building businesses and sending their children to college. Weird.
White adjacent. They're white adjacent or white complicit. Christianity is the norm. Anything other than Judeo-Christian tradition is foreign. No tolerance for deviation from single God. Status, power, and authority.
So much projection.
Whites are the only ones worried about wealth in their jobs, and but it came from white culture. Being oriented towards the future, planning for the future at all. Time, following rigid time schedules, time viewed as a commodity.
Wealth is worth in white culture. What culture was it that gave us the concept of bling? But it's a white concept.
Progress is always best. Aesthetics based on
holidays based on Christian religions. Like, why would our calendar be based on 2,000 years?
Our justice based on English common law. Protect property. Oh my gosh, that's the white culture. Protect property. Well, Marxism is white culture too, you schniggles.
I guess English common law is pretty white, even though it applies to everybody equally, and that's the point. That's why it's called the common law.
Written tradition is white culture. So what they're saying.
That reminds me of when they didn't want Gal Gadot to play
being polite
Cleopatra.
Is white culture. Decision making is white culture. Majority rules, parentheses, when whites have power, is white culture.
So I just realized like, according to all of this, or at least most of this, the original white supremacist would have been Genghis Khan.
Oh my gosh, it's so freaking stupid.
No, but this is the part that scares me, is because, like, I mean, it's not even an exaggeration that, like, if you went and polled your average college student today or people in high school right now, and I think if you asked them, they would say, I think a majority would say that, white people invented slavery, because people say this. I hear them say it, or like, I mean, the lesser, like, it's related, but it's almost as big a lie as, like, the concept of police began as slave catching. Like, people believe this because they're saying it. And, like, yeah, it's not an accident, and it's like, it's not an accident that, like, a typical Democrat um overestimates the rate that unarmed black men are shot by police by, like, 2 orders of magnitude. Like, it's not a whoopsie. People aren't arriving at these terribly wrong ideas by accident.
So this is something Andrew Clavin's always pointed this out
Whiteness
from the Daily
chart.
Wire, is that whenever the left does something stupid, it's reported in the media as Republicans pounce. So they put up that stupid chart, and the story's never stupid idiot leftists put up stupid chart in stupid museum. They
Republicans
announce it as
pounce.
Republicans pounce, Republicans African American Museum whiteness chart.
This guy you already don't like is opposed to this thing.
And so they still try to frame it as he's mad at them talking bad about whiteness or something like that. But it's the ultimate thing. It's the same thing John Oliver's doing with his long kettle logic episode, is that those white people, you could frame them entirely as they are getting angry that you are declaring them supreme. You are declaring them the only ones who care about written history. They're the only ones who care about being on time. They're the only ones who care about meritocracy. They're the only ones who care about family. And it's such a terrible, horrible, supremacist lie. Like Carl Benjamin always call them, you're white supremacists with a conscience. That's what you guys are. And
I think I mean, like, Confucianism is way more family than white Anglo-Saxon style mom and dad and 3 kids. Like, if you ever read about,
like, museums officials apologize and remove the material because they're idiots, but it gets put in all the newspapers as Donald Trump Jr. had a problem with it.
He just looks. Did you when you and I worked at the Salt Palace, and remember he did a keynote there? Were you in the room with him ever?
No.
I mean, because even from a distance, the guy just he just looks like sleaze. Like, I don't know him personally. Like, God only knows what he's really like. But, like, yeah, he's just got like this weird slicked back hair, and
Two last little screens to share. This is just real quick. Once again, I've shown it before, but here's Crenshaw saying, because it's one of the things in the John Oliver videos, they try to do the gotcha on Chris Rufo, that Chris Rufo said, it's going to be easier for me to just call all critical race theory and just put it all under that umbrella. And
oh yeah, I was going to say something earlier, because when they say, like, oh, that's not critical race theory, that's critical whiteness theory, where it's like, let's see, they all start with the same premises, they all agree in all the major points, they don't disagree on anything, they nest perfectly together, but they're completely different, and to conflate them means that you're an idiot and you don't really understand. Like, no, I get it. Like, no, it, like, again, like,
the reason they say that,
they can fool me by saying that Narconon isn't Scientology.
But and one of the main reasons
they'll
make that argument is you'll find, like, an example of, like, there's obviously been anti-racism in all the schools. There's anti-racism programs, anti-racism this and that and the other. So they say critical race theory is not in school. Look at all these anti-racism programs. Those ones are an obvious, easy one. And they say, Kennedy's not technically critical race theory. And so that's their dodge out of that. D'Angelo's obviously been pushed into all those things. They say, well, she's critical whiteness today. And that's how they'll dodge out of it. But we're still making the case that, yeah, even the original critical race theory stuff, the stuff that Crenshaw talks about, those precepts that Rufo showed, they're still pushing that stuff into the schools too. But it's way easier to make the case that Kennedy and D'Angelo are in those schools as well. But they try to argue out of it, saying that's not critical race theory. But here's Crenshaw admitting and saying herself, which you can find even other talking videos of her saying it's easy just to put all race scholarship under the title of critical race theory. And they claim Christopher Rufo sneakily did that to create a manufactured.
I see. I think what's his name? Actual Justice Warrior last year or something did something about the Anytown camp, and because that's packed with this stuff. And I did 2 Anytown workshops, like when I was at school. They just came to me and said, "Hey, we want you to come to this thing." And it was one of those things that were like, in the last few years with critical race theory becoming everywhere, and then like I realized, like, oh my god, it really has been there all that time. And I was there because I think it would have been 94, I think, was the first time I was exposed to it. Because then I remember even then going like, this is kind of weird, why are we talking about this in school? And this is weirdly obsessed with race. But yeah, like that was 94. It was there. They didn't use the words critical race theory, but like all the ideas were there.
Yeah. So I'm going to end up with this thing from 4chan, which is hilarious. It kind of just described John Oliver, which I've noticed myself over the years. It's a little bit how South Park pointed out the manatee writing style of Family Guy, that he just plugs into stuff. But I'm just going to read this real quick and we'll end it off.
Yeah, this was interesting.
What's that?
This thing, I was like, it's funny how 4chan, like, there's so much evil garbage on there, but in some ways, like, it's where the best gems of the internet can be found.
Yeah. The subject of John Oliver came up, well, it's because it's just anonymous. So crazy stuff can get posted there. Funny ideas can get posted there. Totally horrible stuff can get posted there. The subject of John Oliver came up when a colleague, fellow psychologist, and I were discussing politics a few months ago. Although we were both in agreement regarding the general shit-lib inanity of the HBO show, my friend was surprised when I explained that the real insidiousness of it is unmistakably hypnotic structure and pacing. I ended up pulling up an episode or 2 off of YouTube to show her what I meant. All the segments I've ever seen from this show follow the same repetitive format. Present some argumentation and facts, both in scare quotes, for about 10 seconds, then quickly follow up with a snarky quip, which themselves overwhelmingly take the form of complete non sequitur or otherwise absurd metaphor. Before any rational processing of the preceding argument can take place in the mind of the viewer. Further telling is that the only beats or mental pauses in the show's pacing exist solely to highlight the approving laughter or applause of the studio audience. Repeat the basic formula without variation 20 to 40 times in a row, and you have one of the 12 to 20 minute segments that form the backbone of the show. The end effect is obviously not to deliver information, but rather to literally teach the viewers on a subconscious level to mentally associate derisive laughter with any person or opinion that is at odds with the narratives taken on the chosen issue. And it accomplishes this by maintaining a strict adherence to a roughly 20-second cycle in which a stimulus is presented and response is cued. This is the sense in which the show is fundamentally hypnotic in effect, even more so than its precursors in the genre, Daily Show, Colbert, etc. To my mind, Oliver's show is representative of the media's increasing mastery of methodologies of mass conditioning. In fact, it is almost such a perfect technical accomplishment that I would almost have to admire it on technical grounds, which moreover is in the hands of the entirely wrong people.
Yeah. I remember the very first time I saw any Daily Show at all, because I didn't have cable and growing up. Like, I got cable, I think, when I turned 18. And, like, just before I went on my mission was when we first got cable. And so it was a few years before that, I was at a friend's house and they had Daily Show on. And, because they're like, what are we doing? What are we watching? They're like, shut up, it's the Daily Show. And the first bit, I remember the segment was a lady interviewing the lead singer of Guar, and they were driving around in a golf cart. And then, she asked, because at first I'm like, what the hell is this? And then there was something hilarious. And then I quickly understood, like, oh, they're making fun of news. They're making fun of how news is. And for so long, that's what the Daily Show was. Like, they made fun of the media. And obviously that involves politics. And the Daily Show, like, obviously the Daily Show was lefty, but like they didn't wear it on their sleeves and they weren't propagandistic axe grinders. Like when Democrats did extremely stupid things, like Jon Stewart would lampoon it, and he would laugh, and he would make an embarrassed face, but like no one was off limits, and like that is totally gone now, totally gone. I mean, and for years and
It's
years, I
state
mean, like
propaganda. It's just straight state
that guy
propaganda.
that what's his name? I forget his name. Noah, the new Daily Show
Noah?
guy.
Trevor Noah.
Trevor Noah, where like the last World Cup when France won, and Trevor Noah, like it's the Daily Show. It used to be like the bastion of rational liberalism, and instead now it's Trevor Noah making an ethno-nationalist argument about how Africa won the World Cup because a majority of France's national team were black. Like that's the KKK feels the exact same way. That's how they feel about nationality too. Like, the French president was like, no, they're French. Like the French coach was like, what do you mean? Like, because people brought this up, like, oh, like they tried to, oh, so much for colonialism, and obviously it's just so stupid. They're so racist. Because like you would think they would look at like, oh, look at what France has accomplished as a civilization, that they have this super duper diverse team, and they just conquered the world with their soccer skills and broke my little heart because I hate the French soccer wise, purely soccer wise.
Now that's racist because that's a straight black team.
Yeah, that's right. They're Africa. They're actually the African team.
The African team, according to Trevor Noah. That whole entire episode is just a load of crap, just complete apologetics. I don't think he said one thing correct on that entire show, except maybe the thing about NFTs or BS. But he listened to the whole thing, followed the kettle logic of how he even debunks his own claims, saying that there's none of this in school, but here's some teachers who talk about how they taught it in school and that it should be in school, and it's good that it's in school. And
this sentence isn't a sentence. The first sentence is grammatically messed up.
Yeah, this is a part of the other point, is like that Stossel episode about this taking over the medical world. It's all over in schools everywhere. This stuff is in everything. It's pushing into everything. It's in my profession. It's in the psychology profession. It's overtaken schools. It's overtaken everything. It is a virus. It pushes into everything, and they have to teach it, inform it, and create it in their way. And their way is the anti-liberal, illiberal way of doing stuff.
But apparently it's also just stupid. I'm not crazy, right? This sentence, go scroll back up. Talking about race is not easy, although hard is necessary. That's missing words.
Yeah.
Like, that's not English.
Talking about race, while not easy, although no, there's no way to
talking about race is not easy, and although it's hard, it is necessary.
This is gosh, that's fucked so much. This is the Smithsonian. And this is after they took down that other stupid poster that we were showing.
We are here to provide tools and guidance to empower your journey and inspire conversation. Inspire conversation. It's religious language.
Watch that episode of Stossel. The Stossel shows that the stuff's, instead of focusing on any sort of thing in the medical industry that might be necessary and helpful right now, especially coming off of a supposedly terrible pandemic, they're focusing on how people use words to describe other people.
And so, like, what's ironic to me and also double scary is that, like, if there is any field at all where there might actually be like a legitimate utility to race, looking at race,
yeah.
It's in medicine. Like, that's literally the only place where there might be something there.
But when it comes to those things, they'll even get backwards on that.
That's
so they want to talk about race all the time, but then when it comes to something where you do need to think a little bit differently about this person because they might have a higher risk of one thing or another, you're supposed to be blind to that.
Yeah.
But you're supposed to not be blind to them when you're thinking about using words to talk to them.
Like, I know, like, it's been years, but many years ago I was in, I don't know, some kind of public service place. I don't even know what, like a health clinic or something. And, they had, like, it was the same place where I first saw the Wheel of Power, but that's a digression. The Duluth model Wheel of Power and Control. Anyway, if you've never seen that, that's been around for decades. But anyway, there was a thing on there
in that John Dehlin episode
where, they had a notice on it was posted on the board that talked about how people of Polynesian descent are like twice as likely to develop diabetes as non-Polynesians, you know, which is like, and it was there, like, this was obviously like, this was like 10, 15 years ago. So it was before CRT had totally run over everything. But like, cause now they're like, oh, no, don't tell Polynesians they need to be concerned about their diet, particularly as it relates to diabetes, because that's just systemic racials that, you know, evil white supremacist medicine, you know, is imposing this idea that Polynesian diet can contribute to diabetes and that there might be a genetic component there too. I don't know. But yeah, like, again, like the only place where there might be something is like, you're like, they're talking to your doctor says like, you need to be extra concerned about diabetes because you're Polynesian, but that's all going.
Well, here it is. Matt Walsh maybe said it best just today. As we see attacks are starting to happen from Russia on the Ukraine, which caused our inflation for the past year, according to the politics. My huge fear right now is that our military hasn't had enough diversity training to prepare them for this moment. Have we recruited enough lesbians? Are our armed forces sufficiently inclusive? Have they confronted their white privilege? Do they know enough about systemic racism? These are the questions that haunt us all. I think Biden's best move at this point is to record another TikTok skit with a flamboyantly gay social media influencer.
Yeah, like, it bothers me that Matt Walsh, a conservative Christian, is the voice of reason right now. Like, I am old enough to remember when it was the Christians that were the authoritarian, censorious moralizers, and now they are coming to the rescue.
That's the type of stuff you should pay attention to, because man, I know myself. I've talked to you about it before. I'll listen to the Daily Wire guys like Shapiro and Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh, and I think they're funny. And I think when they're the underdogs, like, there's a strange thing that, like, I'll always side with the underdogs too. Maybe I'm always on the side of the oppressed versus the oppressor. But when they're actually the underdogs, when the other thing's actually hegemony, those guys can be funny and all sorts of stuff. I have no doubt in my mind that if you gave them full power, they would all pass draconian laws that I would be in huge disagreement with. They would all pass laws about divorce, because they're all hardcore Catholics, or they'd make divorce extra hard. They'd censor pornography from, all sorts of ideas that, like, are things that would be over the top authoritarian. If they got back into power. I don't hide that from mine now. The problem with me now is usually with all these people is, like, the easy thing for me to deconstruct, as they use the terms, were the neocon warmongering right wingers back in the day, and they're still deconstructed. They didn't undeconstruct for me, although there's parts of it that I'm sure that back then were complete propaganda that I brought into, but there's largely truth to that sorts of stuff. But these guys, they were the first authoritarians. They were the first people who messed up my life by stealing away my Led Zeppelin CDs and stuff like that. And I always remember that. I'll always remember that. I'm not going to forget it. It's not going to go back. And that, even though I know that they are the loosey-goosey right now, because whenever you're the underdog, you're the one fighting the power and all that sorts of stuff. But that's kind of one of the funny things about so much Foucault and Marcuse. It doesn't make any sense in a world where the hegemony is their side,
Yeah, no, that's one of the things, like, where, like, you wonder, like, have you guys not thought past this?
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, so once you get what you want, you will be the hegemony. Then what?
That's what always happens. And I saw a whole video by Chomsky talking about that the other day, that there's always a problem that when the insurgents win, they can't help but become the thing. And there's always revolution. What do you do on day one after the revolution? You become the tyrants. And that's all that happens, and it's all that's going to ever happen. And we got to watch it happen. We got to watch Jon Stewart and friends become the hegemony. And I don't unlearn that lesson. Like, there's underdog people. There's people in this anti-woke movement, the CRT movement, who absolutely would use it, like Stewart used getting major fame his way by being anti-war or whatever. That when they got on top, they'd be just as authoritarian in their own ways on the other side. I'm not going to ever lose sight of that. But
you know what? I just, because you brought up them taking away your Led Zeppelin, did you ever hear the Rock and Roll Firesides?
No.
I think I just found it on YouTube. We should do an episode on the rock and roll firesides.
Where
There
they
was
really talk? Is that where my mom
it
got
was
the idea to take away all my CDs?
almost certainly because there were cassettes, dubbed cassettes of this were floating around my mission. That's how I heard them. And like in the 70s
Oh
and
yeah, we should
80s,
cover
there was
that.
this guy that went around and he would play bits of Zeppelin and Queen backwards.
We
And
should
like
for sure watch it because I mean, my mom must have gotten a hold of that. I worked an entire summer of my life painting houses just to buy CDs because that's how we had to do it back then. And I had every single one of them but Def Leppard taken away from me. And I hate Def Leppard now. I will never forgive Def Leppard for being the only thing I could listen to. Well, them and Bon Jovi. I could only listen to Def Leppard and Bon Jovi. That's all I was allowed to keep. All the rest of them
is tolerable. Bon Jovi's just the worst.
They took them all away from me. They took all the rest of them away from me. And that's all I was left with. That's all I could listen to, man. And
I'm gonna verify that what I found.
I'll never forget that you guys can be the moral panicking freaks too. I'll never forget.
Yeah, exactly. No, like he plays I can't remember. I think it's part of Another One Bites the Dust. And he plays it backwards. And he says that, and because like we already know this joke, or not the joke, it's a trick. It's pareidolia. But if you play something backwards and you can put something into somebody's head and make them hear that, like
Michael Shermer's TED Talk, you can watch.
Yeah, he does that thing. But if you play Another One Bites the Dust backwards, it says "Start to smoke marijuana." And he does this whole thing about how Stairway to Heaven is just an allegory for suicide.
What?
So it all ties together. Because what he says is that, like, because he says all these rock bands are Satanists. It's Satan. It's Satan's plan. And what Satan wants, Satan's goal for us, is for us to kill ourselves. Because if we kill ourselves, then we can't be resurrected. And because for Satan, having a body is the curse. So as long as we're good and righteous, or at least, not satanic, then we will be resurrected. And so the way Satan wins is to convince us to kill ourselves. And that's why he invented Led Zeppelin.
I remember my mom, she went and got all the CDs. She took them all. She like read all the booklets of them. So my mom's like all sitting there looking at like Guns N' Roses Appetite for Destruction drawings. And, oh, no, not this one. And, like, you could have told me this stuff before I went and bought all the CDs. But
fast forward to 5 years ago when I mentioned Zeppelin to my little feminist sister, and she's like, "Well, I don't like them." I'm like, "What do you mean you don't like Zeppelin?" And she referenced something about their masculinity and toxic.
Or she could have. I could have done better than her. They stole songs from Black Poor Southerners. But
no, it wasn't even that. Yeah, it was basically just basic.
The very first time I went on the Midnight Mormons, I said this, and it was true. This is absolutely true. It's true. I'm not talking about seemingly the same type of people. The same people who used to get mad at me and my rocker friends for listening to Megadeth while we played basketball in my front yard. I'm thinking, I have in my mind right now, they're the same ones on my Facebook, mom-splaining me wokeness. They're the same people. It wasn't like saying like esoterically it's kind of the same person. I'm saying it was the same person.
Led Zeppelin is a gateway to Satanism, and Jordan Peterson is a gateway to the alt-right. Everybody understands this.
They fall for all the moral panics. They fall for all of them. Every one of them. And you are the moral panickers. You are the conspiracy theorists. And I get called a moral panicker and conspiracy theorist for saying, look at these nutty, moral panicking conspiracy theorists. Stop it.
You can lead off with that clip, and then we could end it with that clip. All right. 2 hours. Not bad.
Perfect.
Cool. We'll see you.
Wait.